80s today. Hello, this is What's with People with Doc Locke. I'm social psychologist Dr. Stephanie Lockbuehler, and today we will be talking about the question, what's with people doing better or worse at stuff when other people are around? When is an audience helpful, and when might it hinder our performance? Hey, y'all remember the recorder? Oh geez, that's loud. You might remember learning this baby in middle school and then having to solo perform 3 blind mice in front of the class, or maybe in front of an audience of parents with their camcorders all pointed at you. Did you end up playing better with others watching? Or did that situation make you play worse? That wasn't annoying at all. Or maybe you weren't a recorder kid, but instead you remember being forced to do the presidential fitness test. That sit and reach, I know that I'm aging myself, but that thing could fuck right off. Did you run faster or do more pull-ups or sit-ups or the sit and reach better when you were being evaluated versus if you were doing that shit alone? Yeah, I don't think anyone was doing that alone. If you did better when others were around, this would be an example of social facilitation, which is when just the mere presence or even the imagined presence of other people results in doing better on a task. Woohoo! Fun fact, one of the first experiments ever done in social psychology was to investigate this phenomena. And it all started in 1898 when a researcher named Norman Triplett noticed that bicyclists were much faster when others were present than if they were just racing against the clock alone. After noticing this, he set up an experiment to further investigate this. But instead of with bicyclists, he had children reel in a fishing rod, either with another kid present or just by themselves. And no surprise, they found that the kids were faster at reeling in a fishing rod when in the presence of another kid than when they were doing it alone. What's really cool is that this finding has been shown not just with humans, but also with animals like birds and dogs and chickens and rats and even insects. In one famous study, a researcher named Zients, yeah, that's pronounced Zients, like science, but Zients, found that cockroaches were faster at going down a runway when other cockroaches were present than if they were just alone. Vogue. Yas, queen. Shantae, you stay. His study was the inspiration for one of the theories that explains social facilitation called the activation theory, also known as the drive theory. And it says that the mere presence of others creates arousal. Not that kind of arousal, more like a general energizing of the body. I'm energized! Which then promotes the dominant response or the most likely response from the person or animal. And this response is then based on their ability. For example, if the task is easy or well learned, like running or reeling in a fishing rod or just walking down a runway, then the dominant response is doing those things. And the arousal from being around others promotes or helps do those things better. Woohoo! For example, in the case of the cyclist, the presence of others alone created an arousal, and having trained for a long time, the dominant response of cycling was easy or well learned, so their performance was then facilitated. Social facilitation, facilitated. You see where I'm going? With cockroaches, going down a runway is very easy because of, like how sexy they are. But really it's easier. So being around other cockroaches made them do it faster as a result of that arousal. Aroused because they're so sexy. However, in the case that a task is difficult or not well learned, like solving a difficult puzzle or performing a new song on the recorder, the dominant response is doing poorly at that task, so that shitty or not good response is promoted when others are around, meaning you'll do worse. This is called social inhibition. An example of this would be if a dancer had to perform a routine that he had not practiced well and then was forced to perform in front of an audience, he would perform worse than if he was just practicing alone in the studio. It's so hard with the cockroaches when they had to do a more complex task, like going through a tricky maze instead of just going down a runway. They performed worse with other cockroaches present than when they were alone. This is because the dominant response is not doing it well. So that is what's being promoted. Oh yeah. There have been a number of other explanations to the phenomena of social facilitation, one of which is the distraction conflict theory. This theory claims that the presence of others causes a distraction. Since we tend to pay attention to others when they're around, it's distracting, and this is the source of the arousal that either has a positive or adverse effect on performance. For example, this theory claims that it is not just the mere presence of others that causes the arousal, but the distraction of other people's presence that causes the arousal. In some of the studies that investigated this, they found that other non-social distractions like flashing lights can cause similar outcomes that the presence of other people does. Oh, that's hard to say. The presence of other people does. Does that make sense? That still doesn't sound right. Whatever. Another explanation is the evaluation apprehension theory, which is that people do feel arousal due to the prospect of being evaluated by others. In other words, social facilitation is not just explained by the activation of physiological arousal, but the fear of being evaluated is what creates this arousal. This approach is supported by a study where participants performed a task either in front of an audience that was blindfolded or the audience was not blindfolded. And what they found was that people's performances were not affected by the blindfolded audience who would not be able to evaluate them, but their performances were affected by the audience that was not blindfolded. So this theory basically says that it's not just the mere presence of others that affects performance. It's more about that fear of evaluation by others. And so this makes sense for humans, but this doesn't really explain the animal and insect studies that we just talked about, unless you believe that animals have thoughts related to a fear of being evaluated by their peers. And maybe they do. So another theory is that the presence of others just makes us more alert, which is what increases our arousal. This is called the alertness hypothesis. This explanation says that when other people are around, we're just more alert because people are kind of unpredictable, so we're generally more vigilant around others. This explains the insect and animal behavior as well for those who don't believe that they have a fear of evaluation from others in their species. However, in the case of humans, arousal due to expectations of evaluation, in my opinion, is the best explanation for social facilitation effects because it incorporates the fact that we are social creatures that depend not just on the presence of other people around us, but also on their positive evaluations of us. People's positive evaluations are important for our self-esteem and for social inclusion. And are you sick of me talking about this yet? We are programmed to give a shit what others think of us for survival purposes. It's true. Therefore, we are driven to receive positive evaluation from others and to avoid negative evaluation in order to maintain positive feelings about ourselves and to be included socially by others. For example, before I perform the recorder in front of people or the sit and reach in front of the president, it is the presidential fitness test after all. It is not the mere presence of others that makes me nervous or creates that physiological arousal. It's the prospect of positive or negative evaluations from others that makes me nervous or creates that physiological arousal. I've said arousal a lot. And it might not just be the actual presence of others that incites physiological arousal, but it's been found that the imagined evaluation or presence of others can impact performance too. Like taking a test online by yourself, or maybe posting a video on the internet about social psychology in the hopes that others will love it as much as you do. All of that can trigger arousal, even though nobody's present. It's just the anticipation of evaluation that creates that arousal. So be nice. So does practice make perfect, or does practice make progress? Well, in this case, practice makes preferential performance per presence of people. That's a lot of P words. I'm hilarious. For more videos, check out whatswithpeople.com or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and all of those fun places. It's great to see you. Thank you so much for joining, and please come again. Bye. Mary, hold a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. Mary, hold a little lamb. I've said arousal a lot. Animals like birds and dogs and chickens and chickens. What the fuck is a chicken? God, you're loud. Shut the fuck up. Well, that's it.